Shabbat Shalom. Shabbat Shalom. Welcome everyone here in the indoor chapel at TBJ and streaming at home online. It's great to see you. We're going to start with Shalom Aleichem. There you go. You can find it in your Siddur, or we have it up here on the screen, virtual tefillah. Shalom Aleichem, Malachei Hasharet, Malachei Elyon, Melech Malchei Hamlachim, HaKadosh Baruch Hu, Boachem L'Shalom, Malachei Hashalom, Malachei Elyon, Melech Malchei Hamlachim, HaKadosh Baruch Hu, Baruchuni L'Shalom, Malachei Hashalom, Malachei Elyon, Melech Malchei Hamlachim, HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Tzedchem L'Shalom, Malachei Hashalom, Malachei Elyon, Melech Malchei Hamlachim, HaKadosh Baruch Hu, Melech Malchei Hamlachim, HaKadosh Baruch Hu.
How sweet it is to bring in Shabbat together. Indeed, Shabbat Shalom to all of you again here and those of you who are streaming in from home. We are incredibly happy to celebrate with the Russells on the Shabbat because their daughter Alex, who just in 2009 became a bat mitzvah, you blink your eyes, and she's going to be under the chuppah in just a couple of weeks. I'm the lucky one who gets to officiate at their wedding, and in honor of Alex's wedding, I want to call up Howard and Laura to kindle the Sabbath lights.
As these Shabbat candles give light to all who behold them, so may we, by our lives, give light to all who behold us, as their brightness reminds us of the generations of Israel who have kindled the light. So may we, in our own day, be among those who kindle the light.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kirshanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu lehadlik ner shel Shabbat. Amen.
We turn ahead to page 20 to the words of Lecha Dodi, welcoming in the Sabbath bride. As Cantor Fishbein explained a couple of weeks ago, as we continue to explore traditions, we're going to, in the last verse, stand up to metaphorically greet the Sabbath bride. We're not going to make you turn around because that seems to feel awkward for people, but we can imagine the Sabbath bride coming in from the front door as opposed to the back door. So when that comes, we'll ask you to rise and welcome her in. Page 20, Lecha Dodi.
Lecha Dodi likrat kala yalalai 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 Erev Shabbat Mekabelai Lecha Dodi likrat kala yalalai 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 Erev Shabbat Mekabelai Shamor v'zachor b'dibur echad Hishmiyanu el hameyuchad Adonai echad u'shemo echad L'shem ultiferet ve'letila Lecha Dodi likrat kala yalalai 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 Pnei Shabbat Mekabelai Lecha Dodi likrat kala yalalai 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 Pnei Shabbat Mekabelai לקראת שבת לכו ונלכה כי היא מקור הברכה מראש מקדם נסוכה סוף מעשה במחשבה תחילה Lecha Dodi likrat kala yalalai 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 Pnei Shabbat Mekabelai Lecha Dodi likrat kala yalalai 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 Pnei Shabbat Mekabelai Hitoreri Hitoreri Ki ba'orech u'mi'ori שיר דברי, כבוד אדוני עלייך נגלה. Lecha Dodi likrat kala yalalai 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 Pnei Shabbat Mekabelai Lecha Dodi likrat kala yalalai 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 Pnei Shabbat Mekabelai. Shalom עטרת בעלה גם בשמחה ובצהלה תוך אמוני עם סגולה בואי חלה Lecha Dodi likrat kala yalalai 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 Pnei Shabbat Mekabelai Lecha Dodi likrat kala yalalai 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 Pnei Shabbat Mekabelai Lecha Dodi likrat kala yalalai 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 Pnei Shabbat Mekabelai Lecha Dodi likrat kala yalalai 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 Pnei Shabbat Mekabelai.
We remain standing, turning to page 146 for the Baruch Hu.
Yalalai lai lai yalalai lai lai yalalai lai lai yalalai lai lai la 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 la, ya la 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 ya. Barechu Adonai HaMevorach. Baruch Adonai HaMevorach Le'olam va'ed, Le'olam va'ed. Ya la 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 la, 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 ya la la la.
Please join me in the Hebrew. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher bidvaro ma'ariv aravim b'chokhmah potach she'arim uvitfuna mishanei itim umachalif et hazmanim umisader et hakochavim b'mishmaroteim barakir kirtzono borei yom v'layla golel or mipnei choshech v'choshech mipnei or.
ומעביר יום ומהביא לילה ומבדיל בין יום ולילה אדוני צבאות שמו אל חי וקיים תמיד ימלוך עלינו לעולם ועד ברוך אתה אדוני Amahari Varavim.
Amen. We read responsively. In each age we receive and transmit Torah. At each moment we are addressed by the world.
In each age we are challenged by our ancient teaching. At each moment we stand face to face with truth.
In each age we add our wisdom to that which has gone before. At each moment the knowing heart is filled with wonder.
In each age
the children of Torah become its builders and seek to set the world firm on a foundation of truth.
Baruch ata Adonai, Ohev Amo Yisrael.
Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad.
Baruch Shem Kevod Malchuto
Leolam Vaed. Ve'ahavta
et Adonai Elohecha b'chol levavcha ובכל נפשך ובכל מאודיך והיו הדברים האלה אשר אנוכי מצווך היום על לבביך ושיננתם לבניך ודיברת בם בשבתך בביתך ובלכתך בדרך ובשוכבך ובקומך וקשרתם לאות על ידיך והיו לטוטפות בין עיניך וכתבתם על מזוזות ביתך ובשעריך למען תזכרו ועשיתם את כל מצוותיי והייתם קדושים לאלוהיכם. אני אדוני אלוהיכם אשר הוצאתי אתכם מארץ מצרים להיות לכם לאלוהים. אני אדוני אלוהיכם.
We worship the power that unites the universe, a promise of harmony for all. Together,
Yet that oneness eludes our grasp as imperfection and evil abound.
Before our eyes there is a vision of perfection, of order, of goodness.
There is evil enough to break the heart, and there is good enough to exalt the soul.
When will redemption come?
When we grant everyone what we claim for ourselves.
Long ago we escaped the tyranny of Egypt. Our people saw the power of the Most High.
We learned God's presence redeems time and event.
So we celebrate this power that makes for freedom.
Yalla la la, yalla la 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 la, yalla la 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 la, yalla la 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 la. Yalla la la, yalla la 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 la, yalla la 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 la, yalla la 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 la. Mi chamocha ba'elim Adonai, mi kamocha nehedar b'kodesh, nora tehilo, oh sefele, nora tehilo, oh sefele. Who is like you? Adonai, who is like you? Adonai, yalla la la, yalla la 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 la, yalla la 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 la, yalla la 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 la, yalla la la. Ya la 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 la. בנאמר כי פדה אדוני את יעקב וגאלו מיד חזק ממנו ברוך אתה אדוני Ga'al Yisrael.
Amen. Give us a place to rest, O God. Bring us shelter in the long, soft evening shadows of your truth. You are true protection and safety. In your presence we find love and acceptance. Dear God, watch over us as we go forth. Prepare for us as we return. Spread over us your shelter of peace, over all we love, over our Jerusalem and yours.
Baruch atah Adonai, ha'poreh sukat shalom, aleinu ve'al kol amo Yisrael, ve'al Yerushalayim.
Amen. On page 155, we invite you to please rise for the blessings of the Amidah. Adonai sifatai tiftach ufi yagid tehilatecha. Adonai, open up my lips that my mouth may declare your praise. Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu v'Elohei avotenu v'imotenu, Elohei Avraham, Elohei Yitzchak, v'Elohei Yaakov, Elohei Sarah, Elohei Rivka, Elohei Rachel, v'Elohei Leah, Ha'el Hagadol, Hagibor v'Hanora, El Elyon, Gomer Chasadim Tovim, וקונה הכל, וזוכר חסדי אבות ואימהות, ומביא גאולה לבני בניהם, למען שמו באהבה, מלך עוזר ומושיע ומגן. ברוך אתה אדוני, מגן אברהם ועזרת שרה. אתה גיבור לעולם אדוני, מחיי הכל, אתה רב להושיע. מכלכל חיים בחסד, מחיי הכל ברחמים רבים. סומך נופלים ורופא חולים, ומתיר אסורים. ומקיים אמונתו לשני עפר. מי כמוך בעל גבורות ומדומה לך, מלך ממית ומחיה ומצמיח ישועה, ונאמן אתה לחיות הכל. ברוך אתה אדוני מחיי הכל.
אתה קדוש ושמך קדוש, וקדושים בכל יום יהללוך סלה. ברוך אתה אדוני האל הקדוש.
Please be seated. And at this point in our service, we turn our thoughts and we turn our prayers to those in our community who are in need of a prayer of healing. On this Shabbat, we send our prayers to Cindy Baker, Emil Batat, Emily Berkowitz, Ada Barbara Corvelli, Linda Herman, Alfred Marcus, Melissa Miller, Wayne Pollet, Gerard Roos, Gilbert Roos, and Audra Gale Weiss. If there are others in our community for whom you'd like us to say a public Mishaberach, a public prayer for healing, please, I ask you to raise your hand to acknowledge their name out loud, and if you feel so inclined, to share your relationship with them. Prayers for healing. Bobby?
Jim McKenna, in-law.
Thank you. Please.
My sister, Carol O'Day, and my other sister's grandchild, Kesmira.
Thank you. Yeah, Kathy.
Mary Lowengard, Ann Blau, Judy Yu, and Steve O'Shannon.
Thanks, Bill. Kathy? Thank you. Yeah, Eileen. Yes, Steve. Baruch atah Adonai Rofei HaCholim. We praise you, Adonai, our God, you who we call healer of the sick. We sing together the Mishaberach.
Mishaberach Avotenu Mekor HaBracha Leimotenu. May the source of strength, who bless the ones before us, help us find the courage to make our lives a blessing, and let us say Amen. Mishaberach imotenu mekor habracha lavotenu. Bless those in need of healing with refuah shlema, the renewal of body, the renewal of spirit, and let us say Amen.
As I mentioned earlier, in 3 weeks, I didn't mean to push it, Howard and Laura, not 2 weeks, but 3 weeks, Alex Russell and Dan Rappaport will be getting married. And as I said, it still is the case, even though it's 3 weeks, that I am the lucky person who gets to officiate at their wedding. And it's traditional that they have what's called an ufraf, a call up before the wedding in front of their congregational community. I'd like to invite the two of you up for that blessing now. So I outed you before you were here, Alex, that I had already told you, I haven't shared information, that I pulled her bat mitzvah file before the wedding. I always know this information comes in handy eventually. I haven't shared with her anything about it, nor will I tonight, but it was 2009, if I got that right, and it was that following summer that we all went to Israel together, and others, I think the Shermans in the back were with us on that trip. And your kids were only ranged to 13 and 10 at that point, and we blink our eyes and look where we are. It is indeed a pleasure and a privilege to share this with you, and I assume, Dan, this is your mom and your sister. Did I get that right? So welcome to the congregation. I know you've been around these parts for a long time, and this is always home, according to us. Indeed, from Argentina to New Orleans to Short Hills, there's a lot of connection here this evening. The prayer we're about to sing is a prayer you've known since you were a kid, and I imagine, Dan, you do as well, Shalom Rav. And I will often, those of you who've been around for a while know that I always introduce it as the prayer for peace, which is wholeness, balance, and fulfillment. And the reason I bring that is not just because I want to suggest good things for the world, but the word shalom comes from the root shalem, or shlemut, which means peace, but it also means whole, and it means complete. It means total, it means fulfilled, it means perfect, and most of all, it means covenant. I want to repeat, Shlemut means peace, but also wholeness, completeness, totality, fulfillment, perfection, and covenant. And I bring those words to you because not just as I experienced you as a kid growing up, but as I've experienced you as a couple, you perfectly fit every single one of those definitions, manifesting in so many extraordinary ways right in front of my eyes in ways that gives me just the chills and watching how perfect you are for each other. The truth is that, Alex, you told me about Dan that no one in the world makes you smile and makes you laugh and makes you feel the way that he does. Your love is one that has grown so organically and perfectly, innately and naturally. But most of all, you're most yourself with him in this world. And that's what you strive to be, and he helps you be, of course, your very best and authentic self. And Dan, you said about Alex that you love every single thing about her, that her energy is infectious, which we all know. And you said to me the problem with words is they don't do justice, because more than anything, more than words, it's an overwhelming feeling that you have when it comes to Alex. And the truth is that being loved by her really fulfills the dream of your life, that you guys get to be together with the people you've dreamed about. You've known each other since you were 14 years old. They didn't start dating at that point, but they've been part of each other's lives for all this time. And of course, culminating at least this first level of being married in 3 weeks. Before that, I offer you this blessing before your congregation. Mishaberach avotenu v'imotenu, Avraham, Yitzchak, v'Yaakov, Sarif Karechov v'Leah, Hu yivarech et hachatan ve'et hakala. May God, who bless the men and women of Israel in every generation, bless this bride and bless this groom. Dear God, guide them on life's journey. May it be a marriage that is joyful and a good example to all who know them. May they fashion a Jewish home worthy of praise, a secure refuge where they find tranquility during all their days together. May the love of this couple inspire and bless their respective families, the community of Israel, and of course, this congregational family, along with all your circles of friends. May this come with God's speed and with God's love and God's generosity and compassion, as together we say, Amen. Mazel tov, guys. Speaking of that prayer, which I just iterated a bit for you, we turn to page 164, praying for that most precious gift, Shalom Rav.
Shalom Rav al Yisrael Amcha, Tasim leolam. Shalom Rav. ישראל עמך תשים לעולם. כי אתה הוא מלך אדום לכל השלום. כי אתה הוא מלך אדום לכל השלום. שלום רב על ישראל עמך תשים לעולם. שלום רב על ישראל עמך תשים לעולם. וטוב בעיניך לברך את עמך ישראל בכל עת ובכל שעה בשלומך. שלום רב על ישראל עמך תשים לעולם. שלום רב על ישראל עמך תשים לעולם. תשים לעולם. תשים לעולם.
Now taking a moment to look for that still small voice, the wisdom, the intentionality from within, we take these few moments to pray in silence.
יהיו לרצון אמרי פי והגיון ליבי לפניך. אדוני צורי, Adonai Tsuri Vigoali Yehiu Liratson Imrefi והגיון ליבי לפניך. אדוני צורי, אדוני צורי וגואלי בגואלי.
Shabbat Shalom, everyone. We learn the strangest things from the most unexpected of places. I'm still getting used to, as I'm sure all of you are, the spring galas and breakfasts are now all coming back. Some of them haven't appeared for several years, and this week's version was the Jewish National Fund breakfast that happened at Crystal Plaza on Wednesday morning, Thursday morning, I think Wednesday morning at this point, where I was one of the speakers there. Kenneth Fishbein sang the national anthem. And the most fun doesn't happen during the talks, but when you meet people outside. So I ran into one of the Chabad rabbis, Mendy Bogomivsky. It's confusing because one's Mendy Solomon, the other is Mendy Bogomivsky. There's not more Matthews in town, but there are a lot of Mendys in town. In fact, we talked about you, Mr. Dreskin, so we'll have to, hold you to account later on. But Mendy says, I want to teach you a little piece of Torah I learned this morning. You have to realize we got to get there at 7:15 a.m. So I'm thinking, how early was he learning Torah that morning? But what's more surprising than how early he was up, but he said, I learned the best piece of Torah from the craziest YouTube video you could imagine. So can you imagine, Rebbe Schneerson from the old days thinking that his disciples were going to be learning Torah from YouTube? So I was intrigued, and he said, do you know what happens when you add water to cornstarch? And I said, no, I haven't seen this YouTube before. I haven't gone down that rabbit hole. I've gone down others. And he said that when you pour water into cornstarch, it could either act as a solid or it can act as a liquid, but depending on how it is that you go about touching it. So I'm intrigued, and I said, well, tell me more. And he said, once you add water to cornstarch, if you take your hand and you slam it as hard as you can, it's a solid. And so solid, in fact, that it can break your hand. And he said, however, if you approach it by very gently putting your hand in, not only will it let you enter, but very slowly but surely you could make your way through and get to the very bottom of the matter, and in that case, it's liquid. So the actual contents of it reacts to how it is that you touch it. If you slam it, it's a solid. If you put your hands in slowly and work its way through, it's a liquid. And he goes on and he walks away with a wink in his eye. He says, I guess, Matt, it's all about our approach, isn't it? And I thought to myself, and I thought about my approaches throughout life, and I'm sure you all have approaches that can be judged one way or the other, depending on usually who we're married to. And what I mean by that was that I was one of these guys that used to really, when I got upset, left a phone message on someone's machine. Remember, we used to have machines that you couldn't take back, like the Seinfeld episode where he's trying to get the tape back from the machine that he left. Or it becomes, as we grow older, the email that you send that you really wished you hadn't sent because not only did the person get it, but it's now recorded, of course, forever. Or the Facebook post, which is we've evolved into now, where, with all of our bravery, not, as they say, cowardice really, to put all these crazy, insidious things out into Facebook that, of course, stay there forever. Over the years, I've refined myself. I wish I could tell you it's because of me, but it's definitely because of Lauren and a couple of really good synagogue presidents who've convinced me that it behooves me not to be able to act in those ways. Indeed, approach is unbelievably important. So much so that sometimes when we have legitimate plans, we have legitimate critique, if our approach is off, if we hit it with all of our might, the way someone might to the cornstarch, we end up not just breaking our hands, but we end up breaking other things as well, including the fact that we don't achieve something that indeed may have legitimately need to be achieved. The message may have been resonant, it may have been correct, but our approach was so off that it completely lands in the wrong ways. Just think about how many discussions with people we care about go sideways because of how it is that we are heavy-handed in our approach. We may want to approach a relationship. It could be our marriage, it could be our children, it could be our parents, it could be our teachers, it could be our business associates. We may have something that really counts to say, but because of the way we deliver it, the message never comes across. In fact, sometimes, even though you were right, you're considered wrong just by virtue of your tone. Think about how many peace treaties haven't been signed, or how many business deals internationally haven't been done, because somehow we don't know when we're doing business with other cultures that a bow is indeed needed instead of a handshake. A look in the eye you don't give in certain countries, Certain countries you give personal space more than others. Our tone of voice, the way we conduct ourselves in all those ways. Plenty of money has been lost and plenty of peace treaties have not been signed just by virtue of approach. And boy, did we see that play out, which of course is why Rabbi Bogomivsky brought this up to me in this week's Torah portion, Parshat Korach. Do you remember Korach? An unbelievably actually eminent person in the Torah. He is a fellow Levite to Moses. He's in fact his first cousin. In terms of hierarchy, he's way up there. He counts. He has in Yiddish what we call yichus. You all know what yichus is, right? It means that you really are connected to the highest of the hierarchy. And he also had an incredibly important gripe with how leadership of the Israelite enterprise was going. He says in Hebrew, Rav lachem, Korach says, Moses, you've gone too far. You ask too much of us. Why only you? Why should you be in charge? What makes you so great when there's so many of us who have authority, so many of us who have leadership capabilities, so many of us who want to have the voice as well? Well, at first glance, it's actually an incredibly legitimate question, a really fair question. He wants authority to be more pluralistic. He wants authority to be more democratic. He wants a voice that demands equality. He wants a power-sharing agreement. What's wrong with that in society? After all, Korach continues, look where you've brought us. You brought us into this desert where we have wars, where we have this disgusting thing called manna that we have to eat. It's hard to get water. Why not bring us back to Egypt, the land of milk and honey, he calls Egypt, to really, of course, put some salt in the wound. He challenges with fair accusations, yes. So what's the problem? The problem is, according to the rabbis, was his approach. He doesn't talk to Moses, he taunts him. He doesn't fairly go up to him and says, I have something with which I want to talk to you about by way of disagreement. He causes an argument not for the sake of heaven, but for the sake of himself. He cuts him with harsh and bruising and unnecessary language. He insinuates, he accuses, he messes with. The rabbis of old come to tell us that in question, does he really care about the issue itself, or is it just his excuse to access power? Because the truth is he feels jealous. He feels that it's not fair. He feels like he himself wants to be who Moses is. We no longer know if he actually cares about the subject about which he speaks, or if he's just caught up in his own narcissistic cycle, his own ego, and you can never tell the difference, not because the message isn't important, because the way he approaches Moses. He challenges Moses in such an extent, in such an insidious way, that he challenges him to a duel of sorts. And Moses has had it at this point. He says, let's get up at 6 o'clock in the morning. You come with your guys and I'll come with mine. So he shows up, Avitam, Doriam, a bunch of other people. And all he does is looks up to heaven. God opens the earth. Korach and all of his men are swallowed up. And of course, it may be to the extreme and be a little too emphatic, but look where the approach that he took landed him, buried under the earth. A troubling paradox here is that Korach, I want to reiterate, had actually an argument that had incredibly important legitimacy. But he was such an egotistical, well, I couldn't think of a word as I was writing this, he was a jerk. Such an egotistical jerk that the message wouldn't do anything but land wrong, hurt the community, and he ended up, of course, extinct himself. So just think about our way of doing business, how it is that you and I navigate the world, and how it is that we deliver the information that we have to give. I told you, for those of you who come to the Yom Kippur study session, that a year ago, 2 years ago, I came home, and as I will often ask my kids when I get home, I've learned maybe not to ask them after this experience, so what do you think about my sermon for the holidays this year? And Talia, who is probably, and I don't say this by way of accusation because she's an extraordinary human being, she's not the most into the temple of my 3 kids, let me say that. She will often say to Sadie, who's very into the temple, Sadie, you mean you're going to go there again more than you have to? What's wrong with you? Although she does show up for the coffee punch in the spring. So anyway, you get my drift. You get which kid this is. And I said, so what do you think about the sermon? And she never answers. And she looked and she said, Dad, why are you so angry these days? So I actually got offended at first, and Lauren encouraged me to perhaps listen to the kid. And I came and asked you, and you all said, yeah, I think the world and COVID and all the other kinds of things that have been happening, you've been a little bit angrier lately. And Lauren said to me, you may want to think about how it is you temper your language because it's going to impact the way the congregation hears your message. So that's one example. Think about delivery of critique, which the Torah says is so imperative, so sacred, that if we don't critique people, that we ourselves take on the transgression about which we didn't critique. That's how imperative it is. Well, when I went to the Hebrew Union College, when I was in rabbinic school now many years ago, I ended up giving a whole sermon on this subject, my senior sermon, in fact, because I found that there were only two extremes at HUC. There was very little in the middle. You had Norman Cohen, who was here as a scholar, who was the most loving and giving and generous professor you could ever imagine. He almost apologized to you when you didn't do well. So like the love to the point where it oozed out and you wondered if someone could actually sincerely be that loving, and he was. But you didn't know how to take it in terms of your own growth. And another professor, whose name I won't mention because I'm not going to be as kind to him, would treat us, no offense to those of you who might be law school professors, but like what you imagine a law school professor doing. Gewurtz, read section 2, verse 1. What, you think you can't? And yell and yell and yell at us. And so I thought to myself, is this a seminary or is this a law school? And we never knew how to do it, so I gave a whole sermon about it because one was so overly generous that I didn't know if I could take him seriously. And the other one was so utterly critical and harsh that I didn't know exactly what to take seriously. Delivery is everything. Think about, of course, the teachers of our children or the times that you were in school, and I bet you certain things that teachers said to you that to this day that you've never forgotten because you were so impressionable. Talia, again, poor Talia is down south competing in her ninja championship, so I could talk about her as much as I want. Came home 2 weeks ago, and she has a Spanish teacher. She just finished her freshman year of high school, who really drives her crazy. And since I'm the son of teachers, I tend to take the teacher's side more than I do my kids, I have to admit. In my house, I was always guilty until proven innocent when it came to school. So Talia said that her Spanish teacher was just really, driving her, and they had a lockdown drill. They had a lockdown drill in the school, which is now a regular part of the kids' schooling. And this guy decided that he wasn't doing the lockdown drill. He'd had enough. And the kids are thinking, this is the whole point of this, is we live in a culture of guns, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. The principal passes by, and boy, this teacher caught it from the principal. And so immediately they went into lockdown drill mode. And Talia, I guess her foot was sticking out. And he said, Gewurtz, take your foot inside. So she moves her head to see what she was talking about, and he said, boom, with his finger, you would be first. Your head would have been blown off right now. There the message and the delivery may have not been so good, but this is something that this kid, in this day and age, given what we live with, will never forget. And it's funny, Steve, that you're here, because I was just at graduation lunch today. Sadie graduated from middle school. Your rabbi, who used to be young, no longer has kids in elementary or in middle school. They're in high school and college now. We are all getting older. So the head of the EMT squad of South Orange Maplewood was one of the parents there. And so we talked shop, at least as far as you shared it with me. He said he's met you a few times. And he said, what are you speaking about tonight? So I told him. And he said, there was a new person on the truck who was coming in, and when it gets really busy at the hospital, I won't tell you which hospital because we'll end up, they're all wonderful and phenomenal, but everyone has their bad moments. And he said there was a charge nurse that was just unbelievably overwhelmed in the ER, and they rolled in someone that was critical. They knew if they didn't get attention, and the ER nurse just wouldn't lift her head. And because she was so overwhelmed with what was going on around her, and they were trying to get her attention because they were worried the patient was going to die. And this new person on the truck flipped out on the charge nurse. Who do you think you... On and on and on and on. And he turned to the guy after they took care of the person and said, there's nothing about what you said that was wrong. She needed to give attention, but she was obviously overwhelmed. And because of the way that you delivered it, we look wrong. And you looked like the hysterical idiot. She was totally calm, even though she was doing what was wrong. And not only that, but every time we come back here, they're going to remember the way you just acted. And he said it took him so long to sort of unroll what was a made reputation by virtue of how this guy acted towards a charge nurse during this incredible moment of crisis for the doctors and the nurses in the ER and for those who are bringing people in as the EMT. Which will lead me to my most recent example. And looking back at you, a few of you were at the one Milburn who was there last week here. Yeah, just like, is it only Steve in the room? I thought there were a few of you there, but there were a bunch of people from the congregation. And instead of assessing what happened, and there was plenty about which to critique, those of us who were at the Brotherhood dinner last night, I gave a sermon unto itself just about this. But what I want to say that will stick with me for a long time, and to me was incredibly unfortunate, and there were unfortunate things in general that happened there, and the whole incident is that the superintendent gets up to speak, and it wasn't longer than about 10 seconds, and I mean it, 10 seconds, where this woman who gets up and just burst out into yelling such crazy things. Actually, here's the thing. What she said wasn't so crazy. The way she sounded insane. And she was basically yelling, is this how long it takes you to gather people when this is happening to Jews in the community? I felt the same way. Why aren't you doing more to combat hate? I feel the same way. But to get up in a room of 200, 250 people and start yelling and screaming at the superintendent is not only not civil, but I hate to say this, I think it's a bad look for the Jewish community. Because this is a moment where I've said to all the Jews in the community, how we act now in the moments when we feel persecuted is going to say everything about how people who don't know us perceive us. And in that one moment, there's all this unwinding that's going to happen, not because what she felt wasn't legitimate, but because she acted in a way that was inappropriate. Approach is everything. You know the cliche, it's all in the presentation. It's all in the presentation. Korach's anger got the better of him, even and especially when he had something important to say. And I would just ask us to take the message from thousands of years ago, or even last week, or even a couple of days ago when the Chabad rabbi taught me a piece of Torah about cornstarch and water, how it could be solid if you hit it, or it could be liquid if you approach it with a certain sense of being gentle and kind and loving and compassionate. And I would suggest to us, and I'm talking to myself as much as all of you, that we think really carefully and intentionally about how it is that we project our messages, because otherwise those messages just simply will not be heard. Shabbat Shalom, everyone. We continue with a redemptive message, probably the most redemptive of our service, with our prayer called Aleinu. We ask you to please rise as the ark is opened.
עלינו לשבח לאדון הכל, לתת גדולה ליוצר בראשית, שלא עשנו כגויי הארצות, ולא שמנו כמשפחות האדמה, שלא שם חלקנו כהם, וגורלנו ככל המונם. ואנחנו קוראים ומשתחווים ומודים לפני מלך מלכי המלכים הקדוש ברוך הוא. ונאמר והיה אדוני למלך על כל הארץ ביום ההוא יהיה אדוני אחד ושמו
And now at this point in our service, we turn our thoughts to those who have departed this earth, our own loved ones, those whom our friends and neighbors have lost, the martyrs of our people and those of every race and every nation whose lives have been a blessing to humanity. As we remember them on the Shabbat, let us meditate on the meaning of love and of loss, of life and of death. As is our tradition here at TBJ, if you hear the name of one that you may have lost, only if you feel so inclined, please rise to honor their memories. During this period of Shiva, we remember Estelle Greendorfer, aunt of Anne Rabinowitz, Marcia Brous, and Susan Gordon, Lois Grayson, wife of the late Edward Grayson, mother of David and Susan and Marjorie, grandmother of 19, with so many great-grandchildren that I can't read them all. And during this period of Shloshim, the traditional Jewish 30-day period of mourning, we remember Leslie Hirsch, Irene Miller, Norman Wasserman, Arlene Bruckenthal, Harvey Solomon, Jania Dichterman-Dranzen, and Maxine Goldberg. And on this day, Yortzeit, the yearly anniversary of death, we remember Mary Berman, Miriam Caro, Marcy Lee Kastner, Leroy Cohen, Samuel Cooper, Richard J. Ehrlich, Bertha B. Ellis, Abraham Erdheim, Eleanor Fierstein, Abraham Fishman, Irving Friedman, Judith S. Goldberg, Solomon Goldberg, Seymour Goldfeeder, Morris Gorlin, Joseph J. Grease, Rose Grubin, Joan Abrams Hirsch, Leonard H. Howard, Frida Klein, Samuel Koski, Leopold Kramer, Louis Lauritz, David J. Lehman, Joseph Lermer, Joseph Adolf Levy, Murray Levin, MD, Harry Lee, Bernice Cohen Lieberman, Adele Braylow Luftman, Jerome Meyer, Shirley C. Paris, Ruth Peller, Itzhak Pet, Albert Rockland, Bertha Rachmiel, Fanny Eisenberg Rose, Helen Lois Rosenberg, Florence W. Seelig, Samuel Scheitelman, Ruth Sherman, Marshall Sherman, Morris Siegel, Carlos Silberman, Annie Stahl, Elka Stahl, Dr. Abraham L. Umansky, Sylvia Posner-Weil, Joseph Weil, Benjamin M. Weinberg, and Samuel Wolfson. I can't help but to mention the 5 that were lost in the submarine that was exploring the bottom of the sea, captured our imaginations, and of course pulled at our heartstrings. Our hearts are with their families. And as is our tradition here, we remember the names of those who were killed by gun violence in our country this past week. Maria Mora de Eleguar, North Carolina, Kiefer Crafter, North Carolina, Leonard Gady, North Carolina, Lakeisha Hayward, Louisiana, Alex Hernandez, North Carolina, Kevin Hernandez, North Carolina, William Knight, North Carolina, Nifone Knight, North Carolina, Dallas Langley, North Carolina, Damian Lovett, North Carolina, Brangelo Meadows, Illinois, Mako Moore, Missouri, Brian Ross, Illinois, Devin Smith, Idaho, Mary Sparks, Michigan, Sharif Watson, North Carolina. Our hearts are, of course, with their families as well, as guns continue to ravage our country. Zecher Tzadik Livracha. May the memory of the righteous be a blessing to each and every one of us praying here in the Shabbat Eve. And let's honor their memories by inviting their souls in to dwell among us as we rise as one community to say the words of Kaddish. They're found on page 294. Yitkadal v'yitkadash Shemei Rabbah, Biolma divra chirute v'yamlich malchute, b'chayechon v'yomechon v'chaye dechol Beit Yisrael, b'agalau v'zman kari v'yimru amen. Yehei Shmei Rabbah mivorach le'olam ul'olmei al maya, Yitbarach v'yishtabach v'yitpa'ar v'yitromam v'yitnaseh, v'yitadar v'yitalal shemei dekudesha barichu, la'ela min kol birchata v'shirata, tushbechata v'nechemata, da'amiran v'yolma v'yimru amen. Yehei shlama rabba min shemaya v'chayim, aleinu v'al kol Yisrael v'yimru Osei shalom b'mromav, uyasei shalom, aleinu v'al kol Yisrael, v'yimru amen. May the source of peace and peace to all who mourn here, and comfort to those who are bereaved everywhere. As together we say, amen. Please be seated. It's really good to see you all. We invite you, of course, to have something sweet after services. This is indeed the official start of summer by dint of the calendar itself. That means that the synagogue calendar slows down a little bit, although I will tell you that 260 kids are arriving for camp orientation on Sunday morning. We are about to open up our camp, which is a really wonderful atmosphere that is flourishing in incredible ways. If you want to put eyes on it, feel free to come by and see it. It is really beautiful. We are not going to stop learning through the summer. Torah study is every single Saturday morning. I'll be teaching tomorrow morning at 8:45. The Wise Aging Seminar class group, whatever you want to call it, is going strong. Still has 50 to 60 people every month, and I'm going to continue it. And you don't have to have been at classes before, but throughout the summer on July 20th and August 17th, we're going to continue all the way through the calendar year, but be there if you've been and be there if you haven't been. And something brand new that we're trying that's actually been brought to us by Matt Turco, I want to give so many compliments to for after there's not a cantor here tonight, and he didn't go to HEC, but he did one heck of a job, sounded beautiful. So thank you for not only all the music direction, but stepping up in this way. So Matt and I are both actually really big fans of someone named Andy Statman. Ever heard of Andy Statman? You might know him from the Jewish world. You might know him from the Grateful Dead world. He and Jerry Garcia did some extraordinary work together. Well, he is coming with a trio.
Yeah.
You want to say a word?
Yeah, just Andy's bringing his trio, bass and drums, and we're going to be in the Perlmutter Outdoor Chapel on a beautiful August 3rd evening, hopefully. And he plays really wonderful Jewish music, Hasidic music, and American jazz, our greatest art form, and American music, melodies, beautiful, really just beautiful, inspiring music. And we'll all be together, so, please come if you're available.
So this is new. We're trying this. I mean, we have this extraordinary outdoor chapel, and we all go to these places for concerts. Why not have one at TBJ? So that's going to be August 3rd. Not all of us are going to. In fact, I'm not going to be here, which I'm jealous about. But it's happening. We're going to figure out if we're doing bring your own or if we serve. But there'll be food, there'll be drinks of some sort, and more than that, there'll be community and music. And if this works, we have this idea that maybe there'll be sort of like a Tanglewood at TBJ in the future, in the summers where we all look for beautiful things to do, and this will be wonderful. So thank you, Matt, for bringing that to us. Okay, enough talk. Why don't we turn to Shabbat Kiddush? There's no bar mitzvah boy, but I bet you remember yours.
I do. I remember it very well. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam borei peri hagafen.
Amen.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kiddushanu b'mitzvotav v'ratzavanu v'shabbat kodsho b'ahava u'v'ratzon hinchilanu zikaron lema'aseh v'reshit ki hu yom techila lemikrae kodesh zecher letziat mitzrayim
Kivanu v'acharta
ve'otanu kidashta mikol ha'amim v'shabbat kodshecha be'ahava u'v'ratzon hinchaltanu. Baruch atah Adonai Mekadesh HaShabbat.
Amen.
L'chaim.
L'chaim.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam המוציא לחם מן הארץ. Amen.
As we conclude, I want to apologize. You obviously have the older clergy here running this iPad, so I know it hasn't been as crisp and smooth, but I promise I'll catch up.
That was a very kind way to get the message across.
Right, it was.
Please join us for our closing prayer, O Javo Shalom Aleinu, by Ben Ari. O Javo Shalom Aleinu, O Javo Shalom Aleinu, O Javo Shalom Aleinu ve'al kulam. O Javo Shalom Aleinu, O Javo Shalom Aleinu, O Javo Shalom Aleinu ve'al kulam. Salam Aleinu ve'al kol ha'olam. Salam Shalom. Salam Aleinu ve'al kol ha'olam. Salam Shalom. O Javo Shalom Aleinu, O Javo Shalom Aleinu, O Javo Shalom Aleinu ve'al kulam. O Javo Shalom Aleinu, O Javo Shalom Aleinu, O Javo Shalom Aleinu ve'al kulam. Salam Aleinu ve'al kol ha'olam. Salam Shalom. Salam Aleinu ve'al kol ha'olam. Salam Shalom.
Not only is there something really sweet outside to eat, and I'm remiss in not mentioning what is probably most important about outside tonight is Gail Wayman's work that she has prepared, taking, as she does every year, a collective, a conglomerate of everything we've had all year long and putting them into different frames. And the work that you do and Lois does and Bill does and I mean, lots of people come here work in our gallery, so it's a sacred aesthetic that the truth is that we get to enjoy most of the night because we work here every day and we walk past it. So thank you. Did not mean to leave you out before, but I'm glad I remembered now. So come and see the gallery, come and have something to eat. Bring salam and shalom into your week, peace and wholeness and covenant. As together we say amen.
Amen.
Shabbat shalom, everyone.
Shabbat shalom. Shabbat shalom. Shabbat shalom.
That's beautiful. Really, really beautiful. Something this summer brings. You get a little just regular service
Yeah.
without all the craziness of 13-year-olds
Yeah.
out there. And, the tension of the 13,